I was the head of human resources and also the person who, in that week, in case of an accident, I was supposed to take over the crisis leadership role. Okay? Now, I was prepared for that role, I was trained, I had previous experience from my other airlines, so I knew what to expect. And finally, just to give you a little bit more background, in 2010, I took an opportunity to start working on my own. And for the last few years, I decided that there was one topic that has always interested me a lot, which is the nature and the effectiveness of the leaders, the leadership qualities that we need to have in almost every situation of life. If you think about any problem that needs to be solved for society, for a business, for the government, for any kind of collective enterprise, you always need two elements. You need leadership from a person or a group of people who lead, and you need an organization that is aligned to that leadership vision. And when that works very well, we can solve almost any problem. And you know the phrase, we put a man on the moon. I'm also a aficionado of the space program of the 1960s. And when you think about that, you know, if we back then, 50 years ago, with less technology than we have today, were able to do that, what other problems could we solve? And yet, we are now in 2014, 6 years after the worst financial crisis ever, and there seems to be so many problems that we're unable to solve. And my belief is that because we don't have the right leadership skills in the people who are designated or elected or appointed to be the leaders, and we also don't have in the organizations the right structure, the right processes to make them as efficient as they can. So this is what this conversation is about today, okay? The world is very different. There is a pre-Lehman Brothers and a post-Lehman Brothers. Just like, you know, in terms of security and in terms of risk, the world post 9/11, September the 11th, is very different, right? So I believe that it is very difficult that we will go back to the situation before 2008 in terms of stability, how predictable circumstances are. And again, it doesn't matter if we're looking at it from a business perspective or a government perspective. Just think about any collective enterprise that requires a group of people to come together to solve any problem, requires a very different set of leadership skills and organization skills than we had before. This is my belief, but when you look at change and you take it on a negative angle, on a negative perspective, well, as an organization or as leaders, change is going to create uncertainty. It's going to make us lose focus. Okay, so we're not going to look at the whole picture. We're going to maybe try to manage everything like on a firefighting basis day to day, short term. And it creates for the organization a lack of engagement, meaning that if I'm working or collaborating in an organization where I'm not sure if I'm going to have a job the next month, that I'm not getting all the information from the leaders, that I see very strange behaviors, I'm not going to come to work very motivated. And I'm not going to say, oh, I'm going to give my best to this enterprise, right? So that's what I mean with uncertainty, lack of focus, and disengagement. But it's also true that situations that bring change, and change that is totally unexpected, sudden, rapid, brutal almost, is also an opportunity to innovate. It's also an opportunity to get creative, you know, find creative solutions to problems, and perhaps even discover unhidden talent, or hidden talent, basically, yeah, to find hidden talent. I have seen both situations in companies that I have worked for. And again, just to give you the background, I have worked for, 3 or 4 companies, but in one part of my career, I was responsible for negotiating agreements with other companies, so I got a chance to see how other 25 airlines operate. Big, small, medium, in Asia, in South America, and Europe. So I really got to be, have the wonderful opportunity to see all of these different companies work. And so I've seen companies that embrace change and become very creative. They put new technology. They empower their people to do more things. And I have seen companies like the one I'm referring to, the example that I heard yesterday. I thought that this new leader was going to be a 21st century generation leader. And you're talking about a guy who's managing this big company as if it were, you know, a small company where you need to be in control of everything. That's impossible in the 21st century organizations. We know, and experience has proven, it doesn't really help anybody to operate as a small business. So, not just have the status quo. The status quo is not good anymore. You know, then there's a second question, right? So, okay, any of you could be thinking, well, you know, I work for a company, you know, we're 2, 3, 4, 5,000 employees. You know, there's a president, there's a director general or a CEO. You know, how can I make this person change his habits or her habits or, you know, their habits in case of the leadership team? But I think you're right that in any organization, thankfully, we also have these so-called agents of change. And they're not necessarily the persons who are in the highest office. It could be people from, you know, the ground floor, from the front line, you know? And I think that this is a very relevant conversation because of the next point, which is really what I think all of us are in the business of doing here. Now, if I understood correctly from Alexandra, most of you, or all of you, have some responsibility with the people management of your organizations. So you are from human resources, from training, from development, you own businesses. You are responsible, in a way, as Alexandra and myself are, as providers of these services, to try to find the way to close this skill gap, which is to your point. So if we know that a leader is narrow-minded, is not competent enough to conversate and to communicate, it has a lot of difficulty understanding how to deal with change, we are all in the business of helping those people to close this gap of the skills. Excellent in leadership, and I think all of us would like to be in organizations that are efficient, productive, where coming to work is fun, where I go after 8 hours thinking I made a positive contribution, I did something that was, you know, good. And I think that, you know, we as human resources or training and development people are a good agent of change.